Oh, boy. Howdy doody, my friendy duties. This is Telecreations here. What up? So, today we're going to be talking about Scooby-Doo, of course, because I believe it is a good touching point as to the start of some generations' interest in horror. Now, I have no real basis of this except for someone actually posted this on Reddit in the, I think it was r/horror, saying how they think that Scooby-Doo was what really got them into horror and that they were introducing their kid to it. I was thinking to myself, it's not a bad point, because I watched, which I have here, the Scooby-Doo Where Are You TV show. This is the first and second season, which is like, how many episodes? I don't know, it's 507 minutes worth, and they're all about 20, 25 to 20 to 30 minute episodes. So, yeah. And I was watching it the other day because I was doing a binge of it, mostly because I wanted to just relive some of the episodes, see which ones I hadn't seen before, because a lot of them I couldn't remember, but a lot of them I could remember because I had grown up with the show, but I'd grown up with what seemed like a particular amount of repeats. So I'd have a lot of episodes that I had seen before, but, there was episodes that I hadn't seen before. I'm trying to think of one that I had seen before. It doesn't matter. I've seen a lot of them. I don't think I've seen every single episode of the show. But I don't really mind, because I have the first two seasons. That's good enough for me. It's the original run. And while I was watching it, because I was readjusting this whole entire shelf, I thought to myself about, that guy's Reddit post saying, how it was what first got him into horror. I'm thinking this is like, for children, horror is something very particular. Horror isn't like watching The Thing. It's, watching probably a cartoon or Goosebumps or some shit like that. I'm trying to think of ones that are more obvious for international audiences, especially American ones. I'd definitely say there were a lot of shows that we had in Australia that one that was like kind of stop motion animated that always started with this like movie theater that this kid went to, and it was just run by this creepy guy, and like he was eating popcorn, but the popcorn was actually spiders and stuff. Really creepy stuff. And that always got to me, it was always creepy, but I always enjoyed watching the episodes, much like watching Scooby-Doo. You got the Phantom coming after you or whatever, You got a lot of different horror villains coming after you, but rewatching it now, it's very clear that they're not scary at all. Like, even the most interesting villain that I've seen in the show, which was the Phantom Ghost, is just a dude doing mirror projections, and it's like, oh my god. It's a great episode. I love that kind of stuff because Scooby-Doo is very formulaic, which is also something I think helped horror audiences, because Scooby-Doo is very, like I said, formulaic. Much like a lot of horror, especially stuff like slasher films. And it's usually the stuff that you're not used to that can be a little bit more on the horrifying side. Like, The Thing is really horrifying if you're not into body horror, that mutation stuff, all the kind of stuff that comes with it. But there's also the horror of, existentialism. There's the Lovecraftian horror to it. There's the isolation. You can't trust anyone. There's a lot of different elements to horror. The most obvious that people would go to is, it's a creature that can transform and eat people and stuff like that. It's fucking horrifying, but it's really cool. But then with something like Scooby-Doo, and again, like slasher films, ghost films, stuff like that, you get a formula. Your people enter a mystery or a horror scenario, things pick up and get worse, or they start realizing that there's, obviously a history behind it, something that's unique to the area, to the house. Amityville, it's the house, it's haunted. A lot of Scooby-Doo ones is literally they happen to stumble upon a mystery, or they go to an area where they want to stay or they want to have a holiday at, and there just happens to be a spooky villain there, and they're like, oh no, spooky villain, run away, but we want to investigate because we're teenagers. And so, the next part is them investigating whilst also getting chased around because of budgetary reasons. It makes it easier for the show and the animators to just repeat the same animations over and over and over again. It's the 60s, it's fine. Flintstones did it. They all fucking did it. Doesn't matter. It's Hanna-Barbera. It's just what they did. And so, then in the last, third, the last 5 minutes, they usually devise a plan for how to trap the bad guy, which usually goes wrong, but the mishap leads to them actually capturing the bad guy or finding a very revealing thing about the bad guy. And, like, one of them, there's a ghost clown that's haunting a circus, and they go to capture him, and the ghost clown hovers into the trap, but then it disappears. And they actually establish, like, they talk about it a bit later, saying how, the guy actually used a blow-up balloon of what he looked like as a clown, that he was able to, like, remote control to fly around to make it seem like a ghost, but then at will he could just click a button and it would just, deflate. It's like, yeah, there's obviously a lot of nitpicking you could have with the show, but you just come to accept it because that's just what it was like. It's how it's written, it's how it's, animated, that's just how it is. And of course, you find your reveal as to who the bad guy is, usually someone who was established earlier, whether in passing dialogue or one of the random characters you meet. The Captain Cutler is one of the unique ones where it is actually Captain Cutler. It's the ghost of Captain Cutler is haunting people. Oh, Captain Cutler died a few years ago in a shipwreck. And no, it's actually the guy Captain Cutler discovered, how to ransack all these boats and stuff and steal yachts and whatever in a hidden cave. So he pretended to be dead with the assistance of his wife who then she would say, oh, I resurrected his ghost, and because it's just him in a diver suit, and he glows because of this luminescent seaweed he found, and that's it. That's all of Captain Cutler, an iconic character who's even in Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed, and it's just a dude in a diving suit who just goes, woo, who just glows in the dark, more or less, it's something as simple as that. My favourite one being the Phantom, who is just, again, it's a real projection, but the fact is, the gang just happened to run into, after a fog, this island with a castle, and they just get chased by a ghost the whole time. You don't know who the hell the guy is. It's not until the end that the exposition comes from the sheriff. Oh yeah, he's actually a guy who's wanted in many states. He obviously came here and used, the technology. He's like a magician or some shit. He used the technology there to, scare people off and to all this stuff because he's trying to find a buried treasure, and it's just it's always something as random as that. I'm pretty sure it's not the only episode that's like that, where they stumble into a mystery. There's no obvious clues as to who the villain is, but they still have to trap the villain and reveal who the person is. And then you have someone expository later at the end of the episode, usually a sheriff or someone saying, oh, this person's wanted in all these states and all this kind of stuff. More or less what I'm trying to get at is, how does this relate to horror? It's well, that's the whole fucking point of Scooby-Doo. It's a mystery, but it's a horror. You're trying to find out why this spooky stuff is happening. And of course, they find out why this spooky stuff is happening. And of course, even when I was a kid, it wasn't this idea of, oh, I wonder who the villain is this time. It's not, I wonder who the villain is under the mask, because it's you don't think of it like that. I never thought of it like that when I watched it as a kid. Maybe because I was a bit more susceptible and dumb. Okay, I was more susceptible and dumb, but at the same time, it's watching it now, in my 20s, being I know how this fucking shit works, who's going to be the villain, and if you get some characters at the start of the episode that you don't see for the rest of it, you're it's probably one of them. It's probably that guy, he looks dodgy, There was one where they have a witch in a swamp, and one of the characters talking about how him and his mate went into the swamp, and then, the witch turned his mate into a zombie, or, no, not even. His mate has just he's just asleep. Oh, he's just not on camera right now. It's it's pretty obvious that his mate is the guy in the zombie costume that is resurrected by the witch, and that he's actually the witch. It's it's so freaking obvious. It's just hilarious to watch. But then it's also why are they doing this? Which adds obviously to the mystery. It's not always who they are, but why, which I think works a lot with Scooby-Doo. This is just becoming a video talking about Scooby-Doo. It was the intention. How does it... Because thematically, it's horror. It's meant to scare young audiences, but then it's also kind of got this whole gravitas of, yeah, we're scaring young audiences, but they're also kind of learning that it's not... there's a lot of different layers to it. You can think of it as people are the monsters the whole time, literally because you take off the mask of the ghost and it's actually a human in a costume. You know, they have stuff like that where it's the human, you know, humanity can be evil, they can be whatever, but it's also this kind of whole thing of debunking the fact that creatures like werewolves and vampires and stuff like that exist, and it's just people in costumes. How this generation, all these many generations of children didn't realize that Santa Claus wasn't real is beyond me. Maybe because you actually needed someone to rip off his beard. I don't know. Still, it's interesting stuff, and I think it's a valid analysis to say that Scooby-Doo is something that started a lot of people's horror obsession. And a lot of it's mostly based on the factor of, if you can grow up on a show like Scooby-Doo, or something that does have horror elements, you can ease yourself into horror much easier later on, whether this is in your teens or your 20s. But you will eventually probably come to appreciate it, unless you just devastatingly hate it. Like, I did not like horror as a kid, yet I love Scooby-Doo, and I loved a whole bunch of, like, horror-themed, you know, kid shows as a kid, and I especially loved, you know, stuff like Beetlejuice, which is, it's a horror, but it's more obviously cartoony. There's a lot more cartoony horror stuff that I liked as a kid, but then I also started watching the Alien films as a kid. Yeah, not exactly the kind of thing you want to be showing your, you know, 8, 9-year-old kid, but then I also was watching shit like Doctor Who, which has horror-ish episodes, like the one with the werewolf, or the ghost, the empty child, and shit like that. There were episodes of that where they kind of have a monster of the week, it's a horror theme, but the next week could be more romantic, or it could just be a mystery, or it could just be action. You know, and that even evolved into something like Torchwood, where it's a lot more action horror, which was not easy to get through the first season of that show, but then just became, you know, kind of police procedural, so kind of with supernatural creatures. It was a good show. That was a good thing to watch as a teenager, but I was a bit too young for it still when it came out. Nevertheless, I still enjoy that kind of stuff. And of course, obviously now, I'm really big into horror. It is my favourite genre. My mum doesn't fucking understand it. She's like, how do you watch this shit? And it's just like, I don't know, it's fun. You know, I go around watching slasher films because I find them fun. I don't find them scary. Like, unless you have a really effective jump scare, I don't think the atmosphere is usually that scary. Horror, like slasher films, that's just its own genre of not scary particularly for me, but I really enjoy them. I like, you know, Scream, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, that kind of shit. It's just fun. But then there's obviously a lot more impactful stuff that's a lot more dark and gritty. There's something maybe more supernatural with ghosts, like The Conjuring. I can't really do ghosts really well. I like ghost films. I think, older-fashioned ones, where the special effects was really important, whereas this time it's just invisible wires, and it's like, or CGI or whatever, and it's just not as effective. I still like them and appreciate them. I'm still yet to watch the Conjuring films in particular, but shit like Paranormal Activity and whatever, cheap jump scare movies, don't really do it for me. But that was also, I'd say, a curving thing. You know, I went from Scooby-Doo to Alien to Paranormal Activity, and then kind of in full resolution, I've just grown into loving all forms of horror except for gore porn. I don't like the Saw films. I don't like gore porn. I don't like that whole idea. It just doesn't do it for me. You know, I don't get any entertainment out of it. And ghost films are similar enough. Like, it's hard enough to watch ghost films sometimes because of that kind of stuff. You know, the invisible can kill you kind of deal. It's like, it's not really fun to watch that and then, like, go out into an empty corridor and be like, ah, shit, it's dark. You know, I like watching horror films at night. I watched The Ring the other night, and, you know, the remake, the American version, and it was still a really effective film, and it was creepy, but then I went to bed and I actually was fine the next day. When I watched Ringu, I was fucking terrified for days. I could hardly sleep. You know, I watched something like Wreck, and I could not get that creature at the end of the film out of my head for like the next 2-3 nights. You know, it didn't help that it was also, oh, she only exists in the dark, you know, like that Lights Out film as well. I haven't seen it. I saw the original short film, which is very impressive and fucking terrifying, but so well done. And it's just like, there's stuff like that because of my, you know, adoration for Scooby-Doo, whether it be cartoony, whether it be literally a cartoon, still having this horror mystery theme, and slowly watching more films that engulf this genre, for me personally, it's been definitely an opening up point. Like, of course, it was just a TV show that was on, just on, TV in the Saturday morning cartoons. That's just how it goes. Maybe if I watch something like the Batman animated series, I'd be more into dark and gritty drama. I don't know. Do I think that it's changed my personality? That's made me seek out horror over any other genre? I can't pull enough of that leg to say yes, but I can just say as a certainty that it's allowed me to appreciate horror more. Like, I loved the Alien films. I could hardly stomach them, though. Like, the face hugger, the xenomorph, it scared the fucking bejesus out of me. It took me till, like, I was 16 or 17 when I was rewatching Aliens, because it was just on TV, when I was actually able to face it full on and be like, I am comfortable with this. And then I was fully resolute by the time I watched Alien Covenant, and I was like, okay, yeah, it's still a bit, if it's something new that it's unpredictable, I don't know what's going to happen, there's still that horror element to it, and especially if they do it in new and creative ways. But if they do it to some degree like Alien vs. Predator Requiem, then no, fuck off. I hate that movie. But yeah, I think as an overall, it's a question that can even be pinned to you. If you're a horror fan, what was your first inkling of horror? For you, was it something that you were born and raised on, like myself, but not like as fully? It's not like my family's hardcore horror. It's just a random category of genre of movie or TV show that I used to watch. Horror elements in this, horror elements in that. Growing up watching Scooby-Doo and X-Files and Doctor Who, where it's still sci-fi or mystery or drama, but there is horror every now and again, especially the X-Files episode where they actually have a fucking ghost. Anyway, it's still obviously a prevalent thing. And I know a lot of people didn't grow up with that. I have a lot of close friends who just didn't grow up with horror, who don't like it. But then I've got friends who love horror, and they didn't grow up with it either. They got into it maybe into their teens, but they're more of a casual viewer. I haven't personally met anyone who's a hardcore horror fanatic, at least like myself, who openly goes to see them despite having not liked them until they were maybe a late teenager or only recently gotten into them kind of deal. I haven't met anyone like that, but at the same time it's really hard to have a social circle when the apocalypse is happening in the background. Nevertheless, I still have a bunch of friends who really like horror films, and most of them I've gotten really well along with. One of them's my colleague, him and his girlfriend adore horror. They've literally named their child based on a whole horror thing. It is, like, cute and amazing. And obviously, big props to them, but they they went to America, and they went to Salem, and they went to where the Halloween film was made. They went to all these different horror places. And there's just such dedication that so many people have. I like watching horror films. I have the In Search for Darkness documentary. I like knowing about horror films. I like having more of my mind opening up to them, and I think because my comfort level is so open to them, especially because of growing up on something like this. And look, if I ever have, kids in the future, I will definitely, hopefully, let them grow up on something like that. It's something that was important to me. I don't want them to be someone I don't recognize or understand or communicate with, not until they're a teenager. But just the way to appreciate what I can appreciate. Like, we all have our stories as to how we got into this, how we got into that. One of my favorites is my dad as to how he got into the Alien films, completely by mistake. Went to watch Rocky 2. It was sold out last day before, the next semester of school started. Oh, here's this film called Alien. It's about the show. Cool, let's watch that. When was that film done? 79? All these years later, maybe, let's say 20, 30 years later, introducing it to me, who it's now one of my top 3 favorite films, and it's gave me nightmares for a decade. Probably longer, because I don't remember what age I watched it. It was between the ages of at least, I'd say between the ages of 7 to 10 when I first watched it. And to be fair, I watched Alien, Aliens, Alien 3, Alien Resurrection, Alien vs. Predator, and Alien vs. Predator Requiem. over those years. I think, when was Requiem released? I have no idea. Do we have them on DVD still? 2007. Okay, so I'd say this pack was 2008. So it was by 2008, and I was, how old am I now? If I was 12 and 20, or 98, 2008. Holy fuck, I was 10. I was 10 when I was watching Alien vs. Predator Requiem. This is anime 15 plus. What the fuck? It's just weird. It's like maybe my dad was like completely desensitized to the horror of the film. You know, I'm desensitized to the horror of Alien as it is. Still, facehugger, yeah. But like, I can appreciate it as an art form, as a horror art form. So it's just the fact that I was below the age of 10 when I first watched Alien. It still shocks me, but it's my story now. That's my story. I watched Alien before I was, when I was maybe 7, 8, or 9 years old. It happened to scar me for life. It's great. I love it. So yeah. Did you watch Scooby-Doo? Do you have a show like that, or a movie franchise, or something that you grew up on that, something, it could be for younger audiences, with those Halloween towns and shit like that, maybe it's more of the Tim Burton, the Corpse Bride and, Nightmare Before Christmas and shit like that, Did you have that kind of stuff, or were your parents hardcore, watching Halloween at the age of 5, I don't fucking know. But yeah, did you appreciate that? Did you go through that? What were your experiences? You're not going to comment, I know, but I'm just asking. If you want to, you can. I'm happy to read. I'm happy to respond. So yeah, and also if you don't like Scooby-Doo, well, I don't know. I don't really have any opinions on that. That's just how life is. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this episode of Telecreations. I know I say episode. It's just a video, but I like to make it sound like it's episodic. It isn't. Yeah, so that's just my opinion on the fact that Scooby-Doo started horror, at least for me. Don't know what the hell the title of this video is, but that's just how it be. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Telecreations. I have a bunch of horror. I got a horror playlist up here, maybe another horror one suggested here, because I had Horrorween 2019. I think I'm going for a 2020 version as well, just because I got a lot of horror-based videos that I filmed for October. This video might be coming out in October, or it might be coming out in November. I'm pretty sure I'm filming it for October's release, so there's obviously a lot more horror videos to come over the rest of October, because I filmed a lot of stuff. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Adios.